Live here, March 28th, 7:53 p.m. This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com with my daily wrestling news update. Smackdown did its lowest rating of 2020 last night, 0.4. Now, to put that into perspective, AEW Dynamite did a 0.35 rating this week. So they literally beat AEW Dynamite by 0.5 being on Fox. So that's pretty bad. Apparently, according to reports of the show, even though Wrestlemania has already been taped without Roman Reigns and The Miz being on the show, The Miz is reportedly sick with something. We don't know what exactly, but they didn't address that they're not on WrestleMania 36. They were still building up to the Goldberg versus Reigns match, which apparently didn't actually happen. It was Goldberg against Braun Strowman instead. So yeah, that's a little strange. But I posted my full interview with Vince Russo. It's up free now. And he did bring up the point that these empty arena wrestling shows are only going to continue to lower and lower the interest in pro wrestling because, let's face it, they're lame. So even though it keeps your TV deal going, it really turns people off of the product, and they might overall turn more people off of the product by continuing to do these. Not to mention everything's on lockdown, but WWE for some reason. UFC, though, is still looking for a location for UFC 249. Dana White wants to do Tony versus Khabib April 18th. He says he has about 4 or 5 locations in mind, but people keep throwing curveballs at him, but he's working to try and get that fight to happen. Joe Rogan has said that he's not going to commentate UFC 249. I know he is a little concerned about the virus from my personal listening to his podcast. He also said his comedy show in Vancouver, I think it's happening like within 10 days. He doesn't see that that's going to happen for all of my British Columbia fans watching out there. Some people commented that, do I have something against Jim Cornette? Not at all. I've actually posted pro Jim Cornette videos when he was fired from NWA over some pre-taped comments they released anyways and only fired him after they had negative feedback. I did post some videos on here of wrestlers supporting him. The reason why he hasn't been on my channel, we've asked him 3 times over the past several years, and he's said no all 3 times. I'm not going to continue asking someone that doesn't want to do my podcast. So also I posted a picture of the eye injury I got at the New Japan camp in December 2018 on my YouTube stories. And some people were like, oh, you look like you got beat up. Some people were like, oh, they really showed you the Japanese style. Well, no, it wasn't any New Japan wrestler that did that to me. And I had 2 shoot matches. They were shoot amateur wrestling matches that day. It was in this, I won them both easily. The second match only lasted about 30 seconds to a minute. I got headbutted in it, but I still won. So the people saying, oh, the Japanese really showed you. No, it was an amateur wrestling match accident. And I was back training the next day. And for the person that commented, should you really be still wrestling with hepatitis C? Well, first of all, I've been cured since 2013. I have medical documents to prove it that I actually provided to New Japan before they put me in that camp. And second of all, I'm not even wrestling anymore. I'm a full-time reporter. But just to be clear, I've had a clean bill of health since December 2013. I've also wrestled for Impact Wrestling since that time, and they've my medical documents were good enough for Impact Wrestling as well. And they were also good enough for an NXT tryout I was supposed to have in 2016 that got me accepted into the tryout, but then they mysteriously canceled me from the tryout a couple days before with no explanation given. And I'll tell you guys a funny story. You know, I've been running outside. I run outside late at night. Last night I'm running. It's probably 3-ish in the morning. I'm running down a hill. I got my headphones on. Some guy comes out of a bus shelter, and it's still very cold here in Canada. We still have, in my area of Canada anyways, there's still snow and ice. This guy comes up holding up like a $50 bill, and he's like, take off your headphones, take off your headphones. So I'm like, okay, this is a little weird. I take off my headphones. He's like, man, I just got kicked out of a house party. I'll pay you $50 if you come back to this house party with me and grab my stuff, because I got my jacket, my phone, and everything. And it's like, I don't even know you. It's past 3 in the morning, and I'm sorry, but I don't need $50 that badly to go to some random house party that you've been thrown out of to get your stuff back. Sorry, pal. But these night runs are giving me some adventures, I guess. MFJ Pillman says, worst rating ever regarding Smackdown. Dark Moon Warrior, can I interview Christian? I don't know if he's still under WWE contract or not. I have used Christian in Great North Wrestling before, by the way. He participated in a three-way match between Christian, PCO, and AJ Styles. And I believe that match is up here on the Hannibal TV. It was during the time he was wrestling for TNA. Van Albright says Wrestlemania should have been canceled. Well, it should have, because it's going to be absolute crap. But then they'd have to give back their Snickers sponsorship money. Then they wouldn't get any pay-per-view money. They're still charging a lot for people that want to order it on pay-per-view. So I think they'd rather keep the money, because they still have to pay people's downside guarantees, like Braun Strowman, who makes $2.2 million a year. So they need money flowing in. That's why they're still making wrestlers wrestle, even though the no fans TV looks like shit, because they still want to get their TV contract money. Papito Flow 78 says this will be the worst WrestleMania ever. I agree. Colonel Quayle was a great interview with Vince Russo, and I understand people that don't like Vince Russo. Supposedly within an hour, one of my fans counted, he said bro 262 times in an hour. I understand if you don't like him, but the bottom line is I need content. I'm trying to get Skype interviews with people. Vince Russo was one of the people that got back to me. He does get hits. That's why I did the interview with him. I'm continuously looking for more people to do Skype interviews with to keep my content flowing. Jordan Dixon says wrestling is weird without a crowd. Jesse says, honestly hope Goldberg beats Braun. Not a big fan of Goldberg, but I like him more. Dave McMichael, that's not a ratings war. That's a limbo contest. How low can you go? That is true, good sir. Ralph Vaquero, not the same with no audience as far as wrestling goes. David Fontaine, loving the content, wishing me the best. Thanks, buddy. Jordan Dixon, you would think the WWE TV ratings would be up with everyone homebound. And just to let you guys know, my ratings are up. My viewership is up, even though I don't have new shoot interviews because my next interview trips have been canceled. Hannibal TV's viewership is up. I'm growing in popularity every single year, unlike WWE that's declining in popularity every single year. For the people that like to say, oh, well, you never made WWE, you suck. I had a contract. It was taken away for health reasons. I'm still getting more popular every year. and I'm 37 years old now. 10 years from now, I'm sure I'll continue to get bigger and bigger interviews. I'm fine with being a reporter. I don't want to wrestle unless I'm getting paid a huge amount of money. Like, I'm not a fan of today's wrestling, and working for the WWE doesn't sound like much fun these days. I'd rather interview legendary wrestlers, MMA fighters, and other people that, like, for instance, I want to interview Dog the Bounty Hunter someday. I'd rather meet celebrities that way, not have to like take the beatings, because it's not 80s WWE. It's not the Attitude Era anymore. It's not the stuff I was a fan of. So I'm cool with this. What do I think of NWA's current product? I haven't liked what I've seen. Big Beef 35. What are my thoughts on Brody Lee? I understand they did a vignette for him last week. I haven't seen it yet. I will probably watch it, but where they were like mocking Vince McMahon supposedly doesn't like people sneezing, and they did a vignette with Brody Lee with the inside joke about sneezing, with Brody Lee getting upset over sneezing or something. It's like, you have a guy here that you're trying to build into a monster, yet his second week in the company, you're doing like subliminal comedy vignettes. I'm sorry, but that's lame in my opinion. Devious 1 NM says, I'm almost at 150K subscribers. Yes, but as I've said, I have a lot of turnover in subscribers. I'm over 100 million views. It's the views that I care about, although I really appreciate everyone that is a subscriber, particularly the longtime subscribers, because you guys are helping giving me revenue during these tough economical times. WWE won't have a ratings boost because their content is much better than any of the current product, Big Beef 35 says. I don't know what they mean. I think he means their old content is much better than their current product. Peter Childs, I think what would be a good idea is to interview some fans who have been watching for the last 30 years. We have interviewed some fans in the past on here. Hard to get a black eye reporting, Winter Slayer says, but unlikely. Yes, and one last thing I'll mention regarding the people claiming that I was looking for sympathy, posting that Stitches picture on my YouTube story. I said in my comment that week I spent in LA that December was the best week I had that year. So how the hell am I looking for sympathy? I don't care about getting my face busted up. I was happy because I wouldn't have gone to Santa Monica if I didn't have those stitches, because the hospital I went to, which by the way had valet parking and treated me really well, was in Santa Monica. So it was a great day. And I interviewed Abbott, Tito Ortiz that week. I attended the PCW Ultra show, got a bunch of interviews, and I love LA. Got to be in LA. I wasn't complaining at all. I was just posting a story. Dana Rush, how do I get my interviews? Through my contacts. I've been in the wrestling business since 2001. Jermaine Brown, do I think AEW is better than WWE? I haven't sat through an AEW show since the first episode, and I haven't sat through a WWE show forever because I'm really just not a fan of either product. I do watch clips of them on Twitter, or for instance, like I watched the Lance Archer, Jake the Snake vignette that they did on YouTube for AEW. I did like that. I don't hate everything from either company. I do watch clips, but like I'm not enough of a wrestling fan to sit through either show these days. I don't have a long attention span, and I like making money. So in the free time I have, I like to make videos that will make me money, or I like to work out, which is one of my passions. But like if I have free time, I'm not going to spend it watching something that I don't find entertaining. But if something interesting happens or there's something everyone's talking about, I'll search it up and look it up on YouTube. Peter Child, just joking, but keep away from Teddy. Ha ha ha. Well, he is going to be apparently locked up with no option of bail until April 24th. AJRX, WWE needs CM Punk. Well, he hasn't made much of a difference in the WWE backstage rating. Sam Lynn says no one needs CM Punk, bitch. I do think that they will eventually bring CM Punk back in because like ratings are falling. Like 0.4 for Smackdown on Fox is terrible. Eventually they'll try anything to pop a rating, and it might get a rating the first time or two, but CM Punk greatly devalued himself with those 2 beatings he took in the UFC. Also, he's been on WWE backstage, so it's not like we haven't seen him for a long time. Brad Shanlon, do I like NWA Power? No, it's far too cheesy for me. Joe the Plumber, $1 billion contract for 0.4 rating. Well, it's a boring contract, but for Vince, it was a great deal. And yes, WWE is not hurting during this time. They're getting so much TV money. They are not hurting. It's the smaller companies that are hurting. Dark Moon Warrior interview with Teddy Long would be awesome. Maybe one day. Breaking, CM Punk to glow. Ha 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 ha. George Bugatti, Punk is too entitled. Mayoga, the Flea. Is it difficult to talk about the WWE falling? I know it's disappointing for me to see it. Brian Wayne, have I lost any weight from being out of the gym? Well, I'm bound to lose weight because I usually lift really heavy. And like, as I said, I'm out of my real job right now. I don't know if I want to go out and spend a lot of money on weights. I think I'm going to continue just using my punching bag, doing my push-ups, plank, ab roller, running, doing free squats. I did 1,000 free squats the other night. But if I lose weight, I'll put it back on. But I just don't want to spend any money. As I said, I'm not wrestling anymore. So yes, the last time I worked out, I always usually use the electronic scale at my gym. When I got out of the hot tub, I'm just wearing a towel. I go on the electronic scale. The last time I weighed in, I was 293. I don't even have a scale at home. Whenever the gyms open back up, I'm praying that it's sooner than later, but it doesn't look good right now. I'll tell you guys what I'm weighing in. Mike Blacksea, that Ace dude should have taped everything when he walked in with his gun out. Maria didn't sound like she almost died. Why did Ace start taping when Teddy was outside waiting for the cops? Well, watch my interview with him if you want to sit through the hour interview and get all the details. But when he came in, from what I understand, he didn't know what he was coming into. Maria, the last text he received from Maria, from what he says, was Maria said she was in danger, and then she didn't text him back. So when he first came in, he wasn't thinking about recording anything. He was just not knowing what he was walking into. When he started recording was the second time Ted came back. Ted had left the house, gone to the convenience store or something, and then returned. And it was when he returned that he alleges that he started taping. So, as I said, I wasn't there. We don't know what's going to happen. It's all going to come out in court. We'll see what Maria says on the stand. I'm open to interviewing Maria. If anyone knows her and she wants to be interviewed, I don't know if she legally wants to talk about this. If Ted is actually being charged with strangulation and is going to court. I'm just happy this didn't turn into another Benoit thing, because it sounds like it could have. So I'm just happy that everyone got out of it. alive, because it could have been a lot different. Tim Berry, can I explain to us just how much the virus situation affects indie wrestlers? Well, it affects indie wrestlers all differently. If you're a low-level indie wrestler, you're probably making $50 a match as a weekend warrior, maybe wrestling 2 to 4 times a month. That will not really affect you because those guys aren't doing it full time. A guy like the example I used yesterday was Shane Douglas. There's a guy that wrestles 1 to 2 times a weekend. I'm not going to tell you guys how much he makes, but it's safe to say he makes a good chunk of change. So this guy's probably lost at least 2 months worth of bookings and autograph appearances. Billy Jack Haynes, let's look at this guy. He was going to be paid a good amount of money to appear at WrestleCon for 2 days for the Hannibal TV. I know he really needs money because he's not working. So he's lost 2 good payoffs. The last time I heard from Billy Jack Haynes was the day Rip Oliver died. He called me to let me know. Since then, his phone has been disconnected. So like the higher up, the ex-legends will feel it, as well as the higher level indie wrestlers, like the Ring of Honor guys, for instance, that are allowed to do indie dates. Because from what I understand, overall, Ring of Honor doesn't pay much, and you really need to supplement your indie dates, because that's how you end up being able to survive. So there's a few higher level indie, like let's say a guy like Davey Boy Smith Jr., who saved his money well, so I know he's not suffering that much. But a guy of his level, that I'm not going to say how much he makes, but he makes a decent sum of money to wrestle twice a week, and like he's not able to wrestle, and his Japanese tour was canceled. Luckily, as I reported a few days ago, Rene Dupree made it to Japan, so he can earn money in Japan. But if he wasn't in Japan, he wouldn't be earning any money. So it does screw over the higher level indie wrestlers and the WWE legends. They'll lose significant money. The lower level guys, they're not making enough for it to make a difference. What are my thoughts on the Bella twins? Never met them. I know that I think it was Brie that was really nice to Billy Graham, and he even did a painting for her. So I have no issues with them. I actually think they're both very attractive. So that's my thoughts on them. DDP Yoga, you didn't know. Well, you know. I've never done DDP Yoga. If someone sends me a DVD, I will. Dark Moon Warrior, who is Brian Last? I have no idea. Junior Masada, 1 million viewers equals a 1.0. No, that's not how it goes. It's actually, I'm no ratings expert, but like, for instance, 0.4 doesn't mean 400,000. It actually equals more than that. So like I'll explain it another day, but like a 1 million viewer is not a 1.0. 1 million viewer would actually be below that. It's weird how it works, but it goes by demographics. Anthony Billy Graham update. The last I heard of superstar Billy Graham, he messaged me to tell me I'm supposed to actually be in California now, but earlier this week I was supposed to be in Phoenix, not stuck here in freezing cold Canada. So a couple weeks ago, Billy Graham messaged me, and he said because of all of his health issues, he was going to have to pull out of my interview in Phoenix because it's very important for him to keep self-isolated, because he's one of the people, he's got heart issues and lung issues. The coronavirus could legitimately kill him. So the last contact I had with him was he was very afraid of this coronavirus, and he was just going to self-isolate, not do my shoot interview. So let's hope whenever this is over and I go back to Phoenix that I can still do that shoot interview. Peter Childs, Billy Jack Haynes was his favorite wrestler from the 80s. Tony Burns, big fan from Scotland. Love your channel. When are you going to get the biggest star of them all, Hulk Hogan, on your show? I don't think, first of all, Hulk Hogan is under some type of WWE contract, but I would ask him the questions that he doesn't want to answer. So I don't think he would appear on my show. For instance, I've been around him a couple times, and one time I was with David Penzer, and he does know me and he doesn't like me. At first, we somewhat got along. I had a few conversations with him, but I don't think he likes a lot of the videos I posted about him, which is fine. But yeah, I don't expect, unless I get so popular that it will be a big boost to his publicity to appear with me, which is possible. I wouldn't expect him to appear with me anytime soon. Also because he is under WWE contract and WWE doesn't let their wrestlers talk to me. Neither does AEW. I think by chatting, the Bella twins might be going in the Hall of Fame too early. Well, the Bella twins' mother is married to Johnny Ace, who is one of the higher ups in WWE. So I'm sure that has something to do with the Bella twins getting in the Hall of Fame. Mark Dark Shadow, does Billy Graham still have a GoFundMe? Yes, he does. If you search Billy Graham on GoFundMe, you can help him out. He still is constantly having medical issues. So if you want to help him out, search Billy Graham on GoFundMe. Darren Doyle, who's my next interview? Everything's up in the air right now because my trips are being canceled. I know I have kind of an agreement with Butterbean that he doesn't live that far from me, maybe about 12 hours drive. Whenever they open the borders, I'm definitely going to interview Butterbean. But for Skypes, I'm continuously working on getting Skypes. I want to get as many Skype interviews as possible. Tony Burns, Grado is a big star in the UK. What are my thoughts on him? I'm not a fan of comedy wrestlers. I got nothing against him, but I'm not a fan of him. Mr. Kennedy interview, maybe one day. Have to say I'm not a fan of his. He wouldn't be on the top of my list, but I wouldn't be opposed to interviewing him. Junior Masada, when am I going to interview Eric Bischoff? I've actually tried to interview Bischoff. The last time I asked, they said he wasn't doing interviews. I'm pretty sure his contract has, like, his WWE contract, there was some type of thing after where he couldn't work for other people, but I don't know. I would be open to interviewing Eric Bischoff. I would suggest, if people that want to see that, tweet to Eric Bischoff that he should do an interview with me. I have nothing against Eric Bischoff, by the way. Absolutely nothing. As I told Vince Russo this, at one point I bought into a lot of the hype that everyone constantly trashes Russo, but as I've learned more about him, I have more respect for him. Same with Bischoff. At one point I bought into all the hype against Eric Bischoff, but I know a lot more about Eric Bischoff now, and I do respect him. I have listened to a lot of his podcasts. I find all these Conrad Thompson podcasts, though, now have way too much advertising. And I don't like hearing all these guys spend half the podcast talking about their dicks or having sex with their wives or whatever. Like, old people having sex is not something I want to hear about. So it kind of turns me off listening to those podcasts, but I have listened to a bunch of them. John Prescott, my favorite Montreal promotion, none of them. They all suck. I'm not going to – I appreciate all your questions, but I got some work to do and dinner to eat before my run, so I'll only answer a few more. Why can't I interview WWE and AEW wrestlers? Renee Colon says, I don't know. I've tried to contact AEW both because you've seen these they've done these things where, like, they have all these YouTubers basically interviewing their guys backstage after pay-per-views. I am one of the I am, let's face it, one of the top YouTube wrestling reporters if not the top. And definitely the most credible if you look at my background. But AEW, for everyone that asks about wrestling, when they first opened up, I contacted them about both wrestling for them or covering like their events or doing interviews with them. They've never answered any of my inquiries. So that's why it's no for AEW. And for WWE, every person I've asked from WWE to do an interview with me has said no. The only one that actually did it, and I'm pretty sure it's because he had no idea who I was the Road Dogg Jesse James, who did a short interview with me a few months ago. He's one of the NXT writers. What's Daniel Puder doing these days? No idea. What are your thoughts on Conrad Thompson? I think I just said it. There's too much. First of all, he's very insulting to people for a big fat guy. Like, I love how when they told a story on Jim Ross's podcast about Sylvain Grenier and Pat Patterson, but they had Sylvain confused with Rene Dupree, who's a friend of mine. And they really completely demolished Rene Dupree. And first of all, I'd love to see Conrad Thompson say some of that shit about Rene to Rene's face, because we all know he wouldn't. But when I tweeted Jim Ross, hey, you had it confused, he retweeted it and said, okay, sorry about that. You're right. It was Sylvain. But the next week on the podcast, there was no corrections, no apologies. So in their archives forever. This is one of the things that turned me off of that. Just because they didn't correct themselves and say, hey, by the way, last week we made a mistake. It was Sylvain Grenier we're talking about, not Rene. You guys know when I make a mistake on mine, on my news updates or anything, if someone corrects me and I research it and it's true, I will say I made a mistake because I want to be as credible of a reporter and as honest of a reporter as possible. What was my favorite territory organization? Mid-South Wrestling. Doing an Observer report later tonight, Dave Kruger said, I already did the Observer report for this week. It came out Thursday, and if you look at my Wrestling Observer report for this week, it's out. Ventura wants Crazy Money to be interviewed. Yes, he does, but you know what? With all that's going on right now, Jesse Ventura is someone that's at the top of my list of someone I want to interview. He's the guy I want to interview most this year. Peter Childs even says you got everyone talking about Jesse Ventura. Brian Blair and Jim Brunzell would be good. I have an interview with Brian Blair on here. It was good. Look it up, and I'll keep doing more. Someone says Conrad's ego has gotten too big. Yes, it has. He's a very arrogant guy. I mean, he's a great self-promoter, but as I said, the last podcast I listened to of his, and I have an iPod, so most of this time I listen to it on an iPod. And it was 8 minutes and something of advertising before they even got onto any wrestling subject. So it's just too much advertising for me. Brian Pillman Jr. interview. Yeah, I would do that at some point in time. I've talked to Pillman Jr. a bit about coming into Great North Wrestling. But for now, Great North Wrestling is up in the air because I'm not planning anything for that until this whole situation is over. So yeah, we'll end it at that. Thanks for all your questions, everybody. I appreciate it. Have a good weekend.